far beyond the last of the planets. A small spacecraft named Voyager 1 is coasting outward through the dark, and it will keep coasting long after the final signal from it has faded to nothing. Tonight, it is the farthest thing our species has ever set into motion, more than 24 billion kilometers from home, and its long journey has barely begun. If the whole Earth shrank to a grain of sand, Voyager would already be a mote of dust past the far edge of the room, and even at 17 kilometers each second, it will take tens of thousands of years to near a single other star. Tonight we follow that small craft down the long river of time, sitting with it as its power fades into silence, then drifting far ahead, past a faraway star in 40,000 years, past the slow turning of the whole galaxy, and on to where the Sunday itself changes and the sky darkens. If someone you love struggles to find rest, consider passing this quiet journey along to them, so the vastness might carry them softly into sleep. Nothing out here asks to be held, and nothing needs carrying into the morning. Let the day loosen and each breath slow. Our first stop is simply here, where Voyager travels tonight. So let us begin. To understand where Voyager is going, it helps to first sit for a while with where it already is, because the place it has reached is emptier and quieter than almost anything the mind can picture. The craft launched from Earth on the 5th of September in 1977 on a mission that was only meant to last a handful of years. Engineers built it to fly past 2 giant planets and send home a few photographs, and then, by every reasonable expectation, to fall quiet. Instead, it kept flying. Past Jupiter and past Saturn it went, and then onward, out beyond the orbit of every planet, out past the place where the last of them wheels slowly around the Sunday, and it never stopped. There is a way to make that distance sit still in the mind. Shrink the whole solar system down until the Sunday is a small marble resting on a table. On that scale, the Earth would be a grain of sand about a meter away, near enough to see at a glance. And Voyager, on the very same scale, would be a speck of dust drifting somewhere out past the far edge of the room, well beyond every planet, still moving quietly outward. That is the true proportion of it. A marble, a grain of sand, a single step away, and a mote of dust already slipping out of the room. Right now, as these words are spoken, Voyager 1 is more than 24 billion kilometers from home. That is a number so large it slides off the mind and leaves almost nothing behind, so it is worth slowing down and laying it out gently. The Earth travels around the Sunday at a distance we call 1 astronomical unit, about 150 million kilometers. Voyager is now more than 160 of those units out. It sits more than 160 times farther from the Sunday than we do, out where the Sunday itself is no longer a warm and ruling presence, but only the brightest star in a very dark sky. Think of it this way. Imagine the Sunday as a single street lamp standing at one end of a long field on a moonless night. From the ground beneath the lamp, its light floods everything. But walk away from it, across the grass, over a fence, down a slope, along a path, until the lamp is only a small bright point behind you, and the ground at your feet is lit by starlight alone. Voyager has walked so far down that field that the lamp gives it almost no light at all. Out where it drifts, the Sunday offers something like a few thousandth of the warmth it gives the Earth. It is a cold country, and Voyager has been crossing it for a very long time. Picture the country the craft now moves through, the space between the stars, which we often imagine as pure and perfect emptiness, and which very nearly is, but not quite. It is filled, ever so thinly, with a faint haze of gas and dust, the raw material from which stars and worlds are slowly gathered. So thin is this haze that a whole roomful of that interstellar space would hold only a handful of atoms, far emptier than the finest vacuum ever made by human hands. And yet, spread across the immense distances between the stars, even that faint whisper of matter adds up, gathering here and there over the ages into the clouds where new stars are one day born. Voyager drifts through this thinnest of seas, brushing past a few stray atoms with every kilometer, in a place that is almost, but never entirely, nothing at all. And it moves through that thin sea at a pace that is dizzying by any earthly measure, and yet gentle against the scale of the stars. 17 kilometers every second is faster than any rifle shot, fast enough to cross an ocean in a few minutes, fast enough to circle the whole Earth in well under an hour. And still, set against the vast gulfs between the stars, that same tremendous speed looks almost like stillness. So slowly does the nearest star grow closer. It is one of the quiet paradoxes of the deep. The craft is racing, truly racing, at a speed no runner or rider could dream of, and simultaneously it is barely creeping, so immense are the distances it crosses. Both things are true at once, and the craft simply holds its pace through the seeming contradiction, neither hurried nor slow, but constant. And it is not only far, it has crossed a threshold that no human object had ever crossed before. Around the Sunday, there is a great bubble, blown outward by the constant thin wind of particles. The Sunday sends streaming in every direction. That bubble has a name, the heliosphere, and its edge, where the Sunday's wind finally loses the strength to push any farther, is called the heliopause. In August of 2012, Voyager 1 crossed that edge. It passed out of the Sunday's own bubble and into interstellar space, into the thin material that lies between the stars. Its companion, Voyager 2, crossed the same boundary in November of 2018, on a different path. Both of them are now outside the Sunday's protective shell, sailing in the space that belongs not to our star but to the galaxy as a whole. It is worth pausing on how quiet the crossing was. There was no wall, no gate, no sudden lurch. The particles around the craft simply changed their character, grew colder and denser, and belonged to a different origin, and instruments aboard the probe noticed the shift and sent word home. That signal, carrying the news home, traveled at the speed of light and still took most of a day to reach the Earth, because even light, the fastest thing there is, needs many hours to cross the gulf that Voyager has opened between itself and us. When engineers send a command to the craft now, they speak, and then they wait most of a day for the faint reply, the way one might call across a canyon so wide that the echo comes back only tomorrow. There is a photograph the craft took long ago that captures this distance better than any number can. In 1990, having flown far past all the planets, Voyager 1 was asked to turn its camera around one last time and look back the way it had come. And in one of the frames it sent home, the Earth appeared, not as a globe, not as a world of oceans and mountains, and every life that has ever been, but as a single tiny point of light, a pale blue speck less than a single pixel wide, adrift in the great dark. Everyone who has ever lived, every story ever told, every joy and every sorrow, the whole of human history, all of it gathered onto that one small mote of light, seen from a place so far away that the world itself had shrunk to almost nothing. Consider, too, how faint a whisper the craft now sends across that gulf. Voyager speaks with a radio transmitter, no more powerful than the small bulb inside a household refrigerator, something like 20 or so watts of power, a gentle glow by any earthly measure. By the time that signal has crossed more than 24 billion kilometers of empty space and reached the Earth, it has spread and thinned until it arrives as one of the faintest signals ever caught, a whisper, a fraction of a billionth of a watt, so weak that only the largest dish antennas on the planet, straining together, can hear it at all. It is as though someone was speaking, very softly from the far side of an ocean, and we had built enormous ears along our own shore just to catch the shape of their words. And out where it drifts, the cold is almost beyond describing. There is no warmth reaching it worth the name, no air to hold heat, nothing around it but the deep and even chill of the space between the stars, a temperature only a little above the coldest that anything can be. In that stillness, the craft's readings come slowly and steadily, the faint pressure of a thin sea of particles, the soft crackle of distant fields, the gentle wash of light from stars unthinkably far away. It is not a hostile place so much as an utterly indifferent one, a vast calm that neither helps the traveler nor hinders it, but simply lets it pass. And pass it does, patiently, ceaselessly, a made thing keeping its own small warmth in the middle of an ocean of cold. One more way to feel the distance is to measure it not in kilometers, but in the time light itself takes to cross it. Light is the swiftest thing there is, quick enough to circle the whole Earth many times in a single second. Yet the light leaving Voyager right now, streaming home toward the world that built it, needs the better part of a full day to arrive. When we look at the faintest readings the craft sends, we are seeing not where it is, but where it was. Most of a day ago, the way starlight always shows us the past. There is a soft poetry in that. Even at the speed of light, the craft is a full day of the universe away from us and growing more distant with every hour that passes. And there is a quiet dignity in how little the craft needs to keep doing what it does. It carries no crew to tend, no supplies to gather, no shelter to maintain. A simple thing it is, really, just a dish and a few booms and a small warm cylinder, assembled by hands on a summer world nearly half a century ago, and asked only to keep going. Everything elaborate about it was for the early years, the flybys and the photographs. What remains now, and what will remain for the ages, is the plainest and most durable core of it, a shape that requires nothing from the universe but to be left alone in the cold and allowed to drift. And the universe, out here, is glad to oblige. It offers the craft exactly that, endless room and endless quiet, and asks nothing in return. That is where Voyager rests tonight, in the truest sense of the word rests, though it is moving faster than any thrown stone. It is still awake, still listening, still whispering back the faintest of readings, from a place no other made thing has ever been. But its long day is quietly drawing toward evening, and the next stop on our river is the slow, gentle fading of its light. Let us drift forward now, a little way into the years to come, and stay beside it as its power begins to soften. Before we let Voyager fall silent, it is worth truly seeing it, because it is easy to imagine a spacecraft as something sleek and gleaming, and this one is nothing of the sort. It is a curious and beautiful assembly of parts, and every one of them was made by hands on Earth for a reason. At its heart is a wide, pale dish, nearly 4 meters across, curved like a shallow bowl and always turned back toward home. That dish is how it speaks to us and how it listens. For its whole journey, it has kept that bowl pointed at a pale blue point of light behind it, so that the thin thread of radio between it and the Earth is never lost. Out from the body of the craft reach long, thin arms. One is a slender boom that carries instruments far from the machinery, so their delicate readings are not confused by the craft itself. 2 long whip-like antennas splay outward, feeling for the faint crackle of electric and magnetic fields in the space around it. And to one side, on its own short arm, sits a small nested cylinder, dark and unglamorous, that is in many ways the true engine of the whole Endurance. It holds a quantity of a substance called plutonium, warm with its own slow inner change, and from that warmth, the craft has drawn its electricity for every year of its flight. That small cylinder is what makes Voyager different from a stone flung into the dark. A stone would simply coast, blind and mute. Voyager coasts too, for it has no engine burning, no thrusters flaring, nothing pushing it along. It moves purely on the speed it was given long ago. The way a boat set gliding across a still lake keeps gliding after the oars are shipped. But because of that warm cylinder, for a while longer, it can also see and remember and speak. It carries a faint spark of awareness out into a place that has never known any. And when we picture it drifting, we should not picture any glow of propulsion, any tail of fire. There is none. It simply glides, silent and unpowered, carried by an old momentum, its dish forever turned toward a home growing ever fainter behind it. That small cylinder deserves a longer look, because its patience is the quiet hero of this whole story. Inside, it sits a quantity of a metal that is slowly, gently changing from one form into another. And as it changes, it gives off a steady warmth. There is no flame in it, no burning, nothing that flares or roars. It is simply warm, the way a stone left in the day's light stays warm into the evening. Except that this warmth renews itself from within, hour after hour, year after year, for decade upon decade. Engineers on Earth chose that arrangement precisely because it asks for nothing. It needs no sunlight, which is why the craft can travel out to where the Sunday is only a star. Nothing within it can wear out or cease. It only needs time, and time is the one thing the journey has in endless supply. The dish, too, tells a story of devotion. For its entire flight, the craft has held that wide pale bowl, turned back toward the tiny point of the Sunday, and toward the still tinier point of the Earth beside it, so that its faint voice never wanders off into the dark unheard. To keep that aim across billions of kilometers, the craft carries small sensors that lock onto a chosen bright star and onto the Sunday, and gently, constantly, it adjusts itself to stay pointed true. It is a kind of faithfulness built into metal a machine that has spent its whole existence facing home, listening for instructions, and answering as best it can. When at last its warmth grows too thin to hold that aim, the dish will drift off its careful pointing, and the long faithful facing toward home will quietly end. But by then, the conversation will already be over, and the craft will have earned its rest. Notice, too, how the whole design is a lesson in doing much with little. The craft was drawn up and built in an age before the small, bright screens that fill our pockets today, with tools that would seem almost quaint now, and yet it has outrun every expectation set for it by a margin of decades. Its makers could not have known it would still be traveling and speaking so long after its planned few years were spent. They simply built it well, with care and with a generous margin of sturdiness, and that care has carried it across a distance and a span of time far beyond anything they planned. There is a gentle encouragement in that, a reminder that a modest thing made with real attention can endure far past the moment and the purpose it was made for. And for all its sturdiness, the craft is astonishingly small against the setting it now crosses. Its widest part, a pale dish, would fit comfortably within a modest room. Set that beside the distances it travels, measured in the trillions upon trillions of kilometers, and the mismatch becomes almost tender. It is a thing the size of a small car, adrift in a space so vast that the nearest star to it will remain, for tens of thousands of years, an unreachable point of light. And yet the smallness is no weakness here. In a place with nothing to strike and nothing to wear it down, a small thing endures exactly as well as a large one, and slips through the great emptiness all the more quietly for taking up so little of it. There is one more thing fixed to its side, and we will return to it later in our journey, because it may be the part that outlasts everything else. It is a round golden plate, a record, fastened to the body of the craft, where no one will ever see it for uncounted years. On it are etched sounds and pictures from the world that made the probe. For now, simply know that it is there, riding along, a small bright disk bolted to a machine, crossing the space between the stars. We will open it, so to speak, when we reach the far country, where it may be the only thing that endures. For now, let us stay with the craft as a whole, and let it carry us forward to the moment its long conversation with home comes gently to a close. Every source of power has its own quiet arithmetic, and Voyager's is written in that small cylinder of plutonium. The substance inside it changes slowly, steadily, giving off warmth as it does, and that warmth is turned into the trickle of electricity that keeps the craft alive. But the change is one way and unhurried. A little less warmth this year than last, a little less next year than this. Across the decades, the trickle has thinned, and the craft has had to give things up, one careful choice at a time. And so, year by year, the engineers on Earth have practiced a kind of tender economy. To keep the most important instruments listening, they have quietly switched off the ones the craft can do without. A heater here, a camera there, a system that once mattered and now can rest. Each shutdown is a small farewell, chosen with great care, so that the craft can go on speaking a little longer with what remains. Through the 2020s and into the 2030s, one by one, the last of the instruments will be allowed to power down, until at last there is not enough warmth left to run even the radio that carries its voice home. There is a homely image that fits this slow economy of power rather well. Picture a house on a long winter evening, its warmth drawn from a single steady hearth, and imagine the people within choosing, room by room, to close the doors on the ones they no longer need, so that what heat remains can keep the last small room comfortable a while longer. First, the far rooms go quiet and cool, then the nearer ones, until at last only a single warm corner is left, and a soft light burning low within it. That is very nearly how Voyager has spent its later years, closing the doors on one system after another, drawing its dwindling warmth into a smaller and smaller circle, keeping the essential heart of it running for as long as the fuel allows. It is not a hardship so much as a careful, unhurried settling toward rest. And when the last of that warmth finally thins away, the change from the craft's own side is no change at all. It does not sense the moment its voice drops below hearing, nor does it know that on a distant world the listeners have set down their instruments and turned to other skies. For the craft, there is only the same steady drifting there has always been, the same slow crossing of the same great dark, carried on the same old momentum. The going does not pause or falter. Only the thin thread of attention that once connected it to home quietly lets go, and the craft, entirely unaware, sails on exactly as before, having lost nothing it can feel and gained, a freedom it will never know it holds. When that moment comes, there will be no drama to it. The craft will not falter or fall. It will simply grow too faint to be heard. Somewhere on Earth, in a great dish antenna, listening across the dark, the last thread of signal will thin below the whisper that can be caught, and then there will be only the soft hiss of the sky. No final message, no last word, arranged in advance. Just a voice that was there and is now below hearing, like a distant bell that has not stopped ringing but has simply passed beyond the range of the ear. And after that, Voyager will drift on, uncommanded, no longer answering, carrying its old momentum into a silence that has no far edge. It would be easy to feel a pang at that, and there is a soft ache in it, the way there is in any long goodbye. But it is worth turning the picture around. The silence is not something that happens to Voyager. It is the point past which Voyager no longer needs us at all. For its whole working life, it depended on a thread of attention stretched across billions of kilometers, on people who woke early to listen and send their careful commands. When the thread finally goes slack, the craft is not abandoned, it is released. At last it becomes a wholly free traveler, owing nothing to anyone, keeping to no schedule, answering to no one, simply carried onward by the physics of a universe that asks nothing back. There is a tenderness in the way this fading has been managed that deserves to be seen clearly. Every choice to switch off one more system has been made by people who never met the craft, who know it only as a set of faint readings and a distant voice, and who nonetheless treat it with the care one might give an old friend growing tired. They warm its fuel lines, so the last of its systems do not stiffen in the cold. Each command is rehearsed 100 times before it is sent, because a mistake cannot be undone across so many hours of distance. And they stretch its remaining strength as far as it can possibly go, coaxing one more year and then one more out of a craft that has already given far more than anyone ever asked of it. It is a long, patient act of stewardship carried out across a gulf so wide that every exchange takes most of a day. And when the readings finally thin below hearing, the craft will still be doing exactly what it was built to do, only without any witness. Its instruments, one by one, will have gone quiet, not because they failed, but because there was no longer warmth enough to run them, the way a lantern dims not from any fault, but simply as its fuel runs low. Picture the very last of those small lights easing down to nothing, somewhere out in the dark, with no one near to see it. There is no sadness in the craft itself, for it feels nothing. The soft ache belongs only to us, the ones who listened. And even that ache can settle into something gentler, once we remember that the fading is not an ending but a threshold, the doorway through which the craft passes from being our instrument into being a free and enduring traveler. It may help to think of the craft's active years and its silent ages, the way one thinks of a lit candle and the long night around it. The candle burns for an evening, casting its small circle of light, and then it lowers and softens and the light withdraws. But the room does not vanish when the flame does. It simply returns to the dark it was always part of, unchanged, waiting, whole. Voyager's decades of speaking are that brief evening of light, precious and warm and quickly spent. The silence that follows is the long night, and it is not an absence, but the far greater part of the story, the part in which the craft, no longer casting any light of its own, drifts on through a dark it was always destined to join. And it is worth saying plainly that the silence is not a lonely thing for the craft, because loneliness belongs to those who can feel it, and the craft feels nothing at all. It does not wait for a signal or long for a voice. There is only the being of it, a made object at perfect ease in the emptiness, carrying its small cargo forward without any sense of the distance or the years. The ache, again, is entirely ours, and it is a gentle one, the kind we feel when we watch something we love become free of its need for us. And once that ache is set down, what remains is a clean and quiet wonder, the plain marvel of a thing so simple and so sturdy that it will go on traveling long after everything that made it and everyone who watched it has passed into the deep memory of time. Here the arithmetic turns beautiful, because although its own light has faded, the journey has hardly started. The craft has spoken to us for a handful of decades. It will drift in silence for millions upon millions of years. Everything we have watched so far, the launch, the planets, the crossing of the great bubble, the slow economy of its final instruments, all of it fits inside a sliver of time so thin that against what is coming, it is scarcely a single breath. So let us take a breath ourselves and let the years begin to gather speed and drift forward now into the first great stretch of the long dark, where Voyager travels on with no one watching and nothing left to do but go. Now the craft belongs entirely to the space between the stars, and it is worth understanding just how empty that space is, because the emptiness is the whole secret of Voyager's endurance. When we look up on a clear night, the sky seems crowded with stars, a spilled handful of light thrown across the black. But the stars only look close to one another, the way distant lamps on a far shore seem to cluster, spread them out to their true distances, and the picture changes utterly. Between one star and the next lies an almost unimaginable gulf of nearly nothing, a few thin atoms in each great cube of space, and then, for trillions of kilometers, no solid thing at all. To feel the scale of it Imagine setting 2 grains of sand down to stand for 2 neighboring stars. Those 2 grains, to match the real distances, would need to be placed not on the same table, not in the same house, but many kilometers apart, 1 grain in one town and the next grain in a town far down the road, with nothing but open air in between. That is the true texture of the galaxy. Not a crowd of lights, but a scattering of solitary embers separated by oceans of empty dark. And into one of those oceans, Voyager has sailed, so far from any shore that it will drift for tens of thousands of years before it even passes within reach of a single other star. This emptiness is a mercy for the little craft. On the surface of a world, things wear down. Wind and water and weather grind everything smooth and then to dust. But in the deep between the stars, there is almost none of that. There is no air to corrode the metal, no rain to pit it, no hands to move it, almost nothing at all to touch it. Now and then, a mote of interstellar dust, smaller than a speck of flour, may drift against it over the ages. But such meetings are so rare and so gentle that across millions of years they amount to little more than the faintest polishing. The craft that leaves the Sunday's bubble is very nearly the craft that will still be traveling when the Sunday itself has changed beyond knowing. To picture the true emptiness once more, imagine shrinking the whole galaxy until each star is a single lit lamp set out across a country. Those lamps, to match the real distances, would stand not in the same room, not in the same town, but each one many long miles from the next, one lamp glowing in a quiet valley, and the nearest other lamp a full day's travel away over the hills. Between them, mile upon mile of open dark, and nothing at all in the space between but a few stray motes of dust. That is the country Voyager crosses, a land of lamps set impossibly far apart, and the craft walks it alone, moving steadily from the neighborhood of one distant lamp toward the neighborhood of another. It will not reach for tens of thousands of years. So picture the years beginning to stream by, not as something lost, but as something simply crossed. 1,000 years pass, and the craft has moved on, no different than before, its dish still turned toward a Sunday that no longer hears it. 5,000 years, and whole ages of human history would have risen and settled on the world behind it. While out here, nothing has changed but the slow shifting of the star patterns as the probe's viewpoint creeps across the galaxy. 10,000 years, 20,000, and still it glides, patient beyond any patience a living thing could hold, keeping its steady 17 kilometers each second, carried by a push it was given in a single afternoon long ago. It helps here to sit with just how gentle the passage of all that time is for the craft. We tend to imagine that surviving for tens of thousands of years must require some great toughness, some ability to withstand hardship. But out in the deep between the stars, there is almost no hardship to withstand. The craft is not battered by storms or worn by seasons. It simply floats in a stillness so complete that a single position could be held for 10,000 years and shift by less than the width of a hair were there anything nearby to measure it against. Endurance here is not a matter of strength at all. It is a matter of quiet. The universe out here is so empty and so patient that mere persistence, the simple act of continuing to exist, costs the craft nothing whatsoever. And so the human mind, straining to feel the length of these years, might do well to let go of the effort and simply watch the star patterns turn. 1,000 years is time enough for a whole civilization to rise and settle back into the soil. Out here, 1,000 years is one small shift in the arrangement of distant lights. 10,000 years is time enough for the ice to advance and retreat across a world, for languages to be born and forgotten many times over. Out here, 10,000 years is a slightly larger shift, the slow sliding of a few near stars against the deeper field behind them. The craft keeps no calendar and marks no anniversaries. It only goes, and the going is so even and so unbroken that the vast spans of time slip by like water under a boat that neither hurries nor rests. There is a comfort worth drawing out here in the plain fact that nothing in this vast emptiness is hunting the craft or hastening its wear. On a world, everything is slowly unmade. Given enough time, iron rusts, stone crumbles, wood softens and returns to soil. All of that is the work of air and water and living things, and out here there is next to none of any of them. The craft floats in a near-perfect stillness, colder and calmer than any winter, where the great agents of decay simply are not present to do their work. To last for 100,000 years in such a place is not a struggle at all. It asks no toughness, no effort. All it asks is that the craft continue to be, and continuing to be is the one thing a drifting object does effortlessly, forever, until something acts upon it, and here almost nothing ever will, and so a curious inversion settles over the whole journey. On Earth, the long survival of anything is a hard-won thing, a matter of care and repair, and constant tending against the pull of decay. Out here, survival is simply the natural state, and it would take a rare and unlikely event to interrupt it. The craft does not endure. In spite of the emptiness, it endures because of it. The very thing that makes the voyage so solitary, the near total absence of anything else, is the thing that guarantees the traveler will still be traveling ages from now, whole and recognizable, its dish and booms intact, its record still fixed to its side. What would be a hardship anywhere else becomes, out here, the quiet foundation of an almost limitless endurance. And as those tens of thousands of years accumulate, the craft begins, at last, to draw near the first landmark of its long voyage. Far ahead, a small, faint ember of a star has been growing, over the ages, from a nameless point into a near neighbor. Voyager is not aimed at it, not falling toward it, but the two are on paths that will bring them, in cosmic terms, almost close. Let us drift forward to that meeting now, 40,000 years from the present night, and see what it means for the smallest traveler to pass, for a moment, near another sun. 40,000 years is a length of time the human mind was never built to hold. So let us build a small ladder up to it. If every year that passes were a single footstep, then 40,000 years would be a walk long enough to cross a continent and turn around and cross it again. All of recorded history, every city and story and song we have ever set down, fits inside the first few hundred of those steps. The rest of the walk, the overwhelming length of it, is time that has not happened yet, time in which Voyager will simply be traveling. And at the far end of that walk, the craft arrives at its first close encounter. The star it approaches is a small, quiet one called Gliese 445, sometimes known by an older catalogue name, in a part of the sky we map to the constellation of the Giraffe, high in the northern heavens. It is a modest star, far smaller and cooler than our Sunday, the kind of steady ember that makes up most of the stars in the whole galaxy. In about 40,000 years, Voyager 1 will pass within roughly 1.6 light years of it. That is the closest the craft will come to any other star for an immense span of time. And it is worth being honest about what closeness means out here. 1.6 light years is close, only in the way that one lighthouse is close to another across 100 miles of open sea. Light itself, moving faster than anything, would still need more than a year and a half to cross from the star to the passing probe. The two will never touch, never come near enough for the star's pull to seize the craft or bend its path by much. They are two travelers on the same dark ocean who pass just within sight of each other's lamps, exchange no word, and continue on. And yet, in the whole 40,000-year approach, and the long departure after, this is as near as Voyager comes to arriving anywhere at all. It is the closest thing to a destination the craft will ever have. There is a thought worth holding gently here about what it means to have a first close encounter that is still so far away. On the world the craft came from, to travel towards something is usually to arrive at it, to draw close enough to touch, to reach a door and step through. Out among the stars, the meaning of nearness is stretched almost past recognition. The closest the craft ever comes to any other sun is a gap that light itself needs more than a year and a half to cross, a distance so wide that the star remains, even at its nearest, only a slightly brighter point in a crowded sky. And yet this is the near point, the closest thing to an arrival the whole voyage holds. It teaches, softly, how differently the universe measures closeness and how much room it keeps between even its nearest neighbors. And it is worth noticing how little the passing changes the craft's path. One might imagine that coming even somewhat near a star would bend the traveler's course, pull it into a curve, perhaps swing it around and send it off in a new direction. But the star is too far and too small for that. Its gentle pull reaches across the gap, only faintly, nudging the craft by the smallest amount, not nearly enough to capture it or to turn it aside in any real way. The craft sails on very nearly as straight as it came, its long course through the galaxy essentially undisturbed by the encounter. Those two travelers acknowledge each other in the language of gravity, with only the faintest of touches, and then continue on their separate ways into the dark, each unchanged by the meeting. There is a gentle symmetry worth noting, because Voyager 1 has a twin. Voyager 2, the craft that crossed the Great Bubble 6 years later on its own path, is bound for its own faint neighbor. On a similar timescale, some tens of thousands of years from now, it will pass roughly 1.7 light years from a small star called Ross 248. Two little craft, launched within weeks of each other from the same world, will drift out in slightly different directions, and each come, ages from now, within a whisper of a different distant sun. Neither one stops, and neither is caught. Each will simply pass, and go on into the greater dark beyond. It is worth lingering on what this passing is, and on what it is not, because it is easy for the imagination to reach for something more dramatic than the truth. There will be no arrival, no landing, no moment where the craft draws up alongside the little star and pauses in its glow. The star Gliese 445 will never fill the craft's sky or bathe it in light. At 1.5 light years and more, that small ember will be, even at closest approach, only a somewhat brighter point among the thousands, a lamp seen across a distance so wide that its warmth means nothing and its pull means almost nothing. The two simply drift past each other in the immense dark, each following its own long path around the galaxy, and neither so much as slows for the other. And there is a quiet wonder in the smallness of it. Across the entire span of Voyager's existence, from the moment it left the Earth to the trillion-year quiet that lies ahead, this modest pass by a modest star is the single closest it ever comes to another sun. Everything else is farther. This is the near point of the whole voyage, the one landmark on an otherwise open sea, and even it is a passing so distant that light itself needs more than 1.5 years to bridge the gap. That is the true texture of a journey between the stars. It is not a series of arrivals, but one long, patient crossing, in which the greatest closeness the traveler ever knows is still a gulf wider than the mind can comfortably hold. And the craft meets that gulf, not with striving but with the same even glide it has always kept. To hold the number 40,000 a little more firmly, imagine laying down 1 grain of rice for every single year that must pass before this meeting. 100 grains, and you have the span since some of the oldest surviving human writing. Pour out a few thousand grains, spilling across a table, and you have gathered up the whole of recorded history, every empire and every song set down since people first pressed marks into clay. To reach 40,000 grains, you would need to keep pouring long after the table was buried, filling a large bowl to its brim with the tiny seeds, each one a full year in which Voyager does nothing but drift a little farther through the dark. And only when the last grain falls does the craft finally slip past its faint neighbor and begin already to leave it behind. There is a gentle lesson tucked inside the sheer patience of this approach, in the way the little star grows so slowly from nothing into a near neighbor and then shrinks so slowly back to nothing again. Nothing about this meeting is sudden. There is no moment of encounter to point to, no single night when the star arrives. It brightens by imperceptible degrees across thousands upon thousands of years, reaches its modest closest point, and dims again just as gradually, so that the whole passing is less an event than a slow tide, rising and falling across a stretch of time longer than all of human memory. And through the entire rise and fall, the craft neither hurries toward the star nor lingers by it, but keeps it steady, even pace, exactly as indifferent to arriving as the deep space it crosses. So, having passed its faint waypoint, Voyager 1 leaves the little star behind, and the small cool ember that grew so slowly from nothing shrinks again, over the following ages, back into an anonymous point among the thousands. The one near approach of the whole voyage is over almost as gently as it began. Ahead lies no other close meeting for a span of time so long that the star Gliese 445 will itself have moved far across the sky. The craft is alone again, and this is the moment to open the small bright disk it carries and ask what exactly is riding along inside the silence. Let us drift forward and turn to the message bolted to its side. Fixed to the body of each Voyager is that round plate we noticed earlier. and it is one of the most quietly hopeful things our species has ever made. It is a record in the old sense, its surface etched with grooves, the way music was once pressed into vinyl. But this record does not hold only music. It holds a portrait of a world. There are the sounds of the earth pressed into it, wind and rain and rolling thunder, the calls of birds and the long songs of whales, a human heartbeat, a kiss, the laughter of a child. Voices greet in dozens of the languages people speak. And there is music gathered from across the whole of the planet, chosen so that whoever might one day find it could hear something of what it was like to be alive here. There is something deeply moving in the particular sounds that were chosen. When one lingers over them, not the grand or the official, but the ordinary textures of a living world, the hush of surf drawing back across a shore, a soft rain beginning, the distant roll of thunder over hills, birdsong at the edge of a morning, the long, searching calls of whales moving through the deep sea, a steady heartbeat, the quiet sound of a kiss, and the bright, unguarded laughter of a child. These are not the sounds a world uses to impress. They are the sounds of simply being alive on a green and watered planet. The small, familiar textures of ordinary days, gathered up with great tenderness and sent out to drift, unchanged, through the long dark for as far as the ages reach. And there is a grace in the fact that whoever might one day find it, if anyone ever does, would meet a world not through its monuments or its machines, but through these gentle human things. They would hear, first, a heartbeat and a greeting and a song. Whatever else they might make of the small golden disc, they would know that the makers had wished, above all, to be met kindly, to reach across the immensity, not with a display of power, but with an open hand. It is perhaps the quietest and most hopeful thing a young world could do, to fold its gentlest sounds into a small enduring token and set it adrift, trusting the deep to carry it, asking nothing, offering only a soft and patient hello to whatever the far future might hold. Alongside the sounds are pictures, encoded in the grooves as patterns that a patient finder could learn to read and turn back into images. And on the cover of the record are etched a set of quiet instructions, drawn not in any language, but in the universal shapes of science, showing how fast the record should be spun and how its pictures are laid out. There is even a small map, a pattern of lines radiating from a single point, that marks where in the galaxy the record was made, using a handful of distant beacons in the sky as landmarks. It is a message in a bottle of the most extraordinary kind, cast not into an ocean, but into the space between the stars, with no expectation of an answer and no knowledge of who, if anyone, might ever draw it out. Here is the part that touches the deep time of our journey. That golden disk was made to endure. In the vacuum between the stars, with no air to corrode it and almost nothing to wear it away, the record is engineered to last on the order of 1 billion years. 1 billion years set that beside the few decades the craft will spend speaking to us, and the proportion is staggering. The voice of Voyager lasts a lifetime or two. Its message could still be legible when 1 billion years have turned, long after the craft has gone dark, long after everyone who made it has become a layer in the memory of a distant world. To grasp 1 billion years, try this. Take the whole history of complex life on Earth. the entire span since the first creatures, more elaborate than a single cell, appeared in the ancient seas. And that is a stretch of roughly that same order on the scale of 1 billion years. Everything, every forest that ever grew and settled into stone, every creature that ever walked or swam or flew, the whole long unfolding of life from its simplest beginnings, fits within about that window of time. The record is built to survive a span as long as the entire story of visible life. It is, in the most literal sense, a time capsule of a single human century, sealed to keep for an age as long as life itself has been complex. There is a particular thoughtfulness woven into how the record was made, and it rewards a slower look. Those who assembled it knew they could not assume any shared language, any common history, any of the countless things one earthly person can take for granted with another. So they reached for the few things that might be common to any mind anywhere: the steady rhythms of nature and the plain logic of number and shape. The instructions on the cover are drawn in the language of physics itself, marking time by the natural beat of a single atom, so that a finder could work out how fast to turn the disk without ever being told in words. It is an act of imagination stretched to its limit, an attempt to speak clearly to someone about whom nothing at all can be known, across a distance and a span of time that neither maker nor finder could ever truly picture. And there is a gentle humility in the whole gesture that is easy to miss beneath the grandeur of it. The people who made the record did not expect it to be found. They knew, better than anyone, how vast and empty the space between the stars truly is, and how vanishingly small the chance that any finder would ever cross its path. And they made it anyway. Into the disk went the sounds of a world, and the greetings of its peoples, and the music of its many cultures, sealed and sent toward a dark so wide that the disk might drift within it, unread for the entire lifetime of the galaxy. It was not a message sent in expectation of a reply. Rather, it was something closer to a quiet act of hope, a way of saying that the brief, bright fact of having been here was worth marking, even if no one ever came to read the mark. There is a lovely reversal of scale hidden in the record, worth pausing over. The disk itself is a small thing, no wider than a dinner plate, light enough to lift in one hand, and yet onto that small surface is pressed the widest gathering imaginable, the voices of a whole world, the music of many peoples, the shapes of its creatures and its landscapes, the greetings of dozens of tongues. It is as though an entire planet's worth of sound and image had been folded down again and again until it fit within the span of 2 open hands. A single small object holds a portrait of a world, and that small object is now the piece of the craft most likely to outlast all the rest, drifting through the ages with its impossibly compressed cargo of 1 century of life. And consider what an unusual kind of clock the record truly is. Ordinary clocks measure time by moving. This one measures it by staying still. It was pressed at a single moment, in a single decade, on a single world, and then sealed against all change and sent where nothing could alter it. So, wherever it drifts, and whenever it might one day be found, it will still hold that exact moment, unchanged, 100 human years, kept perfectly fresh, no matter how many millions or billions of years have flowed past outside. It does not tell the time of the universe around it. Instead, It preserves one small window of earthly time, carrying it forward intact, the way a single pressed flower can keep the shape of one spring long after every other trace of that spring is gone. So, as the craft drifts on past its faint waypoint star and out into the greater dark, it carries this small enduring thing, this pressed portrait of one blue world at one brief moment of its history. Whether it is ever found is a question no one will answer, and perhaps no one ever needs to. The making of it was its own kind of grace, a gesture of a young species reaching out across time it could barely imagine, saying simply, "We were here," and this is what it sounded like. Let us leave the record turning on the craft's flank and drift forward again, out of the tens of thousands of years and into the millions, where Voyager joins a far larger and slower motion, the turning of the galaxy itself. Until now, we have watched Voyager travel in a straight line, out and away from the Sunday. But there is a larger motion it has been part of all along, one so slow and so grand that from close up it cannot be felt at all. The Sunday itself is not still. Along with its whole family of planets, and now along with Voyager, the Sunday is sweeping in an enormous circle around the center of the galaxy, carried on the same great current as billions of other stars. The whole Milky Way is a vast, slow wheel of light, turning in the dark, and every star within it, our Sunday included, is riding that turn. It can be a quiet comfort to realize that the ground beneath us has never once been still. Even now, as we lie quietly in a settled room, the whole Earth is sweeping around the Sunday, and the Sunday, with the Earth and all its family, is racing around the distant heart of the galaxy at a speed far greater than any machine we have ever built. We feel none of it, because everything near us moves together, the way passengers on a smooth ship feel no motion, though the vessel glides swiftly on. Voyager has ridden that same great motion from the very start. First as part of the Sunday's family, and now on its own long loop, carried through the galaxy on a current so vast, and so even that, from within it, all is perfect calm. The stillness we feel, and the stillness the craft keeps are the same gentle illusion, resting atop a motion beyond all reckoning. And there is a quiet grandeur in the size of the circle the craft now traces. Its loop around the galactic center is so enormous that light itself, moving at the greatest speed there is, would take tens of thousands of years merely to cross from one side of that orbit to the other. The craft will not complete even a single turn of it for hundreds of millions of years. And then, having come all the way around, it will simply begin again, tracing the same vast circle a second time, and a third for as long as the galaxy endures. It is a journey with no finish line drawn anywhere upon it, a circling without end, and the craft settles into it as easily as a stone settles into a slow current, content to be carried around and around the great dark wheel for ages beyond counting. The speed of that turning is staggering by any human measure, hundreds of kilometers each second, far faster than Voyager's own modest pace. And yet the circle is so unthinkably wide that a single full turn around the galaxy's heart takes something like 225 to 250 million years. That span even has a poetic name among those who study the sky. They call it a cosmic year, one full revolution of the Sunday around the galaxy. The last time the Sunday stood where it stands now, on the Great Wheel, the world behind Voyager was a place of enormous reptiles moving through warm forests, and the shape of the continents was one no map has ever drawn. Once Voyager's own outward push has carried it clear of the Sunday's neighborhood, it too simply becomes one more traveler on that great wheel. It will not fly off out of the galaxy. Its little speed is nowhere near enough to climb free of the galaxy's vast gathered pool. Instead, it settles into an orbit of its own around the distant center, a long, slow loop that will carry it around the galactic heart again and again, once every couple 100 million years, for as long as the galaxy holds together. The straight line we have followed is really the beginning of an immense circle, and Voyager has all the time it could ever need to trace it. And here, the emptiness returns as a quiet guardian. One might imagine that circling the galaxy for hundreds of millions of years, again and again, the little craft would surely run into something, a star, a world, a wandering rock. But the spaces are so vast and the contents so sparse that the odds of Voyager ever striking anything are almost too small to write down. Picture the galaxy as an entire ocean, and every star within it as a single lit ship, and all the ships spread so far apart that a small drifting cork could wander among them for the whole age of the sea, and never once bump a hull. That is the arithmetic of collision out here. It is so close to impossible that, for all the ages we are about to cross, we can simply set the danger aside. There is something reassuring in the thought that Voyager does not have to work to stay part of this great turning. It does not need to steer or adjust or hold any course. Gravity, the same gentle and unwearying pull that keeps the whole galaxy gathered into its slow wheel, simply includes the little craft in its keeping, the way a wide, slow river includes a single drifting leaf without any effort at all. The craft has no say in the matter and needs none. It was given its small push long ago, and from here forward the galaxy itself does the rest, cradling it in a vast, patient orbit that will hold it for as long as there is a galaxy to do the holding. The traveler is not lost in all that emptiness, it is carried. And the emptiness, which might at first seem lonely, turns out to be the very thing that keeps the craft safe for the long ages ahead. On a crowded world, to endure for millions of years would be all but unthinkable, for there would be 1,000 things to wear a thing down. Out here, the sheer roominess of space is a kind of protection so complete that it is hard to overstate. The craft could circle the galaxy's heart 100 times, cross and recross the great arms of stars 100 times over, and the odds of it ever coming near enough to any star or world to be disturbed remain almost too small to imagine. That same vastness, which makes the journey so long, is the very thing that makes it so safe. What looks from close up like the loneliest of voyages is from a wider view one of the most sheltered. To feel the grandeur of a cosmic year, it can help to shrink the whole galaxy down to something the hand could hold. Imagine the entire Milky Way reduced to the size of a broad dinner plate. Its hundreds of billions of stars gathered into a slow-turning disk of faint light, no wider than an arm span. On that plate, the Sunday and its little Voyager would sit about 2/3 of the way out from the center, far from the crowded heart, in a calm and roomy suburb of the wheel. And even shrunk so small, that plate would turn so slowly that a single full revolution, one complete cosmic year, would still take 1/4 of a billion of our years to come around. the galaxy is not only vast in space, it is vast in time, turning at a pace so stately that no eye could ever catch it moving. And there is a deep restfulness in belonging to a motion that's slow. On Earth, the turning of things is quick and insistent. Day chasing night, season chasing season, always a new beginning pressing on the last. Out on the great wheel, the rhythm is unimaginably calmer. A single turn takes longer than complex life has existed on Earth. Whole ages of a world could rise and settle within one quiet arc of that circle. To be carried on such a motion is to be released, utterly, from all hurry, to move within a rhythm so vast and so gentle that no moment within it is ever urgent, and nothing ever needs to happen quickly, or indeed to happen at all. The craft rides that unhurried rhythm now, and simply lets the great slow wheel carry it wherever the galaxy is going. So the craft turns with the wheel, patient and untouched, and the millions of years begin to pass in earnest. We have crossed tens of thousands of years to reach the waypoint star. Now the count climbs into the millions, and then the tens of millions, and the whole character of the journey changes, because on that scale, even the stars themselves begin to drift and rearrange. Let us gather our patience and drift forward once more into a single full turn of the galaxy and see what a cosmic year looks like from the vantage of the smallest passenger aboard it. As the count runs into the millions, something quietly remarkable happens to the sky around the craft. On the human scale, the stars are fixed, a permanent pattern we can name and map and pass down through generations unchanged. But that permanence is an illusion born of our short lives. Every star is moving, each on its own long path around the galaxy, some faster, some slower, some in one direction and some in another. Over a few million years, those small motions add up and the familiar shapes come apart. The patterns we would recognize tonight slowly loosen, stretch, and rearrange into figures no one on Earth has ever seen, and then into others after those. From Voyager's silent vantage, the whole sky becomes a slow river. Stars that were near drift far, and stars that were far drift near, and the little star it once passed, Gliese 445, wanders away across the heavens until it is lost among the countless others. The Sunday, too, that pale point the craft's dish once faced, slides off into the crowd and becomes just one more unremarkable ember, impossible to pick out. There is no longer any home star to face, only the great slow turning of the whole wheel, and the craft rides it as a leaf rides a current, going where the galaxy goes. A single full turn of the galaxy, remember, is something like 225 to 250 million years. So let us follow the craft through one entire cosmic year, one complete loop around the distant center. In that one turn, an almost incomprehensible amount happens on any world with life. Whole chapters of a planet's story rising and settling, mountains lifting from the sea and wearing back down to plains, oceans opening and closing, climates warming and cooling through age after age. And through the entire vast revolution, the little craft simply glides unchanged, its metal cold and smooth, its record still legible, tracing its patient loop while 250 million years flow past. To hold that against something tangible, imagine the entire turning of the galaxy as the sweep of a single vast clock, its one great hand making one full circle in about 1/4 of 1 billion years. On that clock, all of written human history would occupy less than the tiniest flicker, far thinner than the finest hair, at the very edge of a single tick. And Voyager, for its part, would ride that giant hand around and around, one full sweep, then another and another, calm through every one of them, asking nothing, needing nothing, simply turning with the wheel it belongs to now. There is a quiet gift hidden in the loss of the home star, and it is worth pausing to receive it. For all its working life, and for the first long stretch of its silent drift, the craft had a direction that meant something. A single point in the sky it faced, a place it had come from. Now, with the Sunday dissolved into the anonymous crowd, that origin quietly loosens its hold. The craft no longer belongs to any one star or any one world. It belongs to the whole slow wheel, to the galaxy entire. In losing its particular home it gains, in a sense, a much larger one. It is no longer a thing that left somewhere. Now it is simply a thing that is moving with the great current, at home in the turning itself. And on this scale, the very idea of a landmark quietly falls away. Earlier in the journey there was a waypoint, a single faint star to pass, a moment that could be marked. But across millions and tens of millions of years, even the stars are too fleeting to serve as markers, forming and dispersing their patterns like slow weather. There is nothing fixed left to steer by, and nothing that needs steering by. The craft measures its progress against nothing at all. It simply continues, through a sky that is always rearranging and never repeating, a traveler on a journey with no signposts, no halfway point, no destination drawn on any map. And there is a deep calm in that, the calm of a thing that has fully let go of arriving and given itself over entirely to the going. It is worth sitting for a moment with the sky the craft would see now, if it could see, because it is a sky unlike any that has ever hung over the earth. Gone are the constellations, we know, the patterns our ancestors named and told stories about, for those shapes hold together only for the brief flicker of a few thousand years. In their place is an ever-changing arrangement of stars that no one on Earth has ever looked up at. Patterns that form for an age and then loosen and drift into new ones over and over without repeating. It is a sky in slow, endless motion, a heaven that never settles into any final shape, and the little craft drifts beneath it, or rather within it, one more moving point among the countless moving points, at home in a sky made entirely of change. And on this scale, the mind begins to feel, gently, the difference between the time we live in and the time the craft moves through. Our own lives are measured in years and decades, a handful of turns of a single small world around a single star. The craft moves in units of millions of years, in whole turns of the entire galaxy, in spans so long that our longest histories are less than a single word in a book of countless volumes. There is no fear in this, only a kind of spacious awe, the feeling of standing at the edge of something so much larger than oneself that the smallness becomes a comfort rather than a burden. To watch the craft cross such time is to be quietly reminded how much room the universe holds, and how gently it makes space for even the smallest traveler to go on and on. Turn follows turn, and the millions become tens of millions, and still the craft endures, because nothing out here is in any hurry to change it. But the deep future does hold changes, immense and gentle ones. Not for Voyager, which is nearly changeless, but for the great worlds and stars it left behind. Far ahead on the river, the Sunday that launched the craft will begin a slow transformation of its own, and the neighbor galaxy that hangs in our night sky will draw steadily closer. Let us drift forward now, out of the millions and into the billions of years, and watch, from a serene distance, the calm evening of our own star. Now we cross the greatest threshold of numbers yet, out of the millions of years and into the billions, and to make the leap gently, hold one comparison in mind. If the whole present age of the Sunday, all 4.5 billion years of it since it first began to shine, were pressed into a single day, then all of Voyager's flight so far, and all of human history besides, would occupy less than the final fraction of a second before midnight. The Sunday has been shining for a very long day, and it has a long afternoon and evening still ahead. But that evening does hold a change, and it is one of the calmest and most beautiful transformations in all of nature. For billions of years, a star like the Sunday shines by a slow, steady change deep in its core, turning one light element gently into another and releasing warmth as it does. It is a remarkably stable arrangement, and it is what has kept the Sunday a calm and constant lamp for the whole history of life on Earth. But the fuel at the very center is not endless, and in something like 5 billion years from now, the core will finish the long, slow work it has been doing, and the balance that held the star steady for so many ages will gently shift. The Sunday will begin to change its shape, not in violence, but in a slow, swelling transformation that will unfold across many further millions of years. As the change proceeds, the Sunday will swell outward into what astronomers call a red giant, growing many times its present size until it is vast and distended and far cooler at its surface than it is today. In our frame we will hold it in cold light, as our whole voyage does, but know that in truth it becomes a great, slow, luminous sphere, ballooning across the inner reaches of its own family of worlds. It is not a sudden event, but an unhurried unfolding, a star settling into the grand and gentle phase of its later age, the way a long day mellows into a broad and glowing dusk, and through all of it, Voyager, far out in the cold dark beyond every planet, feels almost nothing at all. That is the quiet marvel worth resting on. This immense transformation of the Sunday, which would reshape everything in its inner neighborhood, reaches Voyager only as the faintest of distant events. The craft is so unimaginably far away, out past 160 times the Earth's own distance and traveling ever farther, that the Sunday's grand change is to it little more than a slow brightening and then dimming of one particular star among the multitude, seen from an immense remove. It drifts on through the whole of it, cold and smooth and unbothered, its old momentum carrying it forward exactly as before. What would utterly remake a world barely stirs a single hair on the traveler that left that world behind. It is worth holding gently, the sheer serenity of this change, because the word transformation can carry a weight of alarm it does not deserve here. What happens to the Sunday across those far billions of years is not a catastrophe, but a natural passage, as ordinary in the life of a star as the turning of a day is in the life of a world. Countless stars across the galaxy have already made this same slow passage, swelling into great cool giants, and then settling into small bright embers. And the sky is full of both kinds even now, scattered among the steady lamps in their prime. The Sunday is simply a star, and like every star it has a beginning, a long steady middle, and a gentle later age. To watch it change is not to watch something go wrong. It is to watch one of the most common and graceful things in all of nature unfold at its own unhurried pace. And through it all, the distance is the craft's quiet blessing. We sometimes imagine the far future of the Sunday as an event that sweeps everything before it, and near at hand. Within the Sunday's own family of inner worlds, the changes are indeed profound. But Voyager, remember, left that family behind ages before any of this begins. It is out past 160 times the Earth's distance, and traveling ever farther, so far removed that the Sunday's grand later chapters register only as the faint brightening and slow dimming of one small light among a whole sky of them. The swelling of the giant, the shedding of the soft outer shell, the settling into a small cooling ember, all of it reaches the craft only as the gentlest change in a single distant point. What is momentous up close is, from Voyager's vantage, barely a ripple. The traveler drifts through the whole of it undisturbed, exactly as it has drifted through everything else. To hold the span of billions of years even a little, it helps to press it into the shape of a single calendar. Imagine the whole present age of the Sunday, some 4.5 billion years, laid out as 1 year, from a 1st of January to a 31st of December. On that calendar, a single day stands for more than 12 million years, and a single hour for 500,000. All of recorded human history, every event we have ever written down, occupies only the last fraction of a second before the final midnight. And the change now coming to the Sunday, its swelling and settling billions of years from now, lies far beyond the end of that calendar, in a whole further year not yet begun. The craft moves out into that further year as calmly as it has moved through everything, carrying its single preserved second of earthly time. And there is a quiet fittingness in the idea that the craft will outlast the star that made possible everything about it. The Sunday warmed the world that dreamed up the craft, powered the hands and minds that built it, and lit the sky it first flew through. And yet, because the craft drifted so far out into the cold before the Sunday ever began to change, it will still be traveling, whole and cold and smooth, when the Sunday has passed through its grand later age and settled into a small, quiet ember. There is no sorrow in this, only a gentle marvel. The child of the star, cast off into the dark long ago, carries something of that star's brief noon forward into an age, when the star itself has grown old and calm, a small enduring keepsake of a system's bright morning, drifting on. And then, after its long giant evening, the Sunday will settle into its final and most peaceful form, having gently shed its outer layers into space as a soft expanding shell of glowing gas. It will leave behind only its small, dense core, a cooling ember about the size of a world that astronomers call a white dwarf. This ember will shine on, fainter and fainter, for an immense span of further time, slowly releasing the warmth of ages into the dark. The Sunday's long day will have quietly come to its close, and in its place a small steady beacon will remain, cooling across the eons. And Voyager, far off in the cold, will keep drifting, having outlasted the very star that made it. Let us carry that thought forward and turn now to another vast and gentle motion in the deep sky, the slow approach of a neighbor galaxy. While the Sunday moves through its long transformation, an even grander motion is unfolding across the deep sky, and Voyager has a front row seat to it, in the sense that it is riding along inside one of the two great players. For our whole galaxy has a near neighbor, the great spiral of Andromeda, and the two of them have been drifting slowly toward each other for a very long time. On any clear and truly dark night, Andromeda can be glimpsed even now with the unaided eye, a faint smudge of light unthinkably far away, and it is steadily, silently growing nearer. In something like 4 to 4.5 billion years, roughly the same deep era in which the Sunday is going through its own slow change, the two galaxies will begin to meet, and it is worth being clear about what such a meeting is like, because the word can call up pictures far more forceful than the truth. When two galaxies come together, the stars within them almost never strike one another. The spaces between stars are so enormous, as we have seen again and again, that the two great pinwheels pass through each other more like two clouds of fireflies merging on a summer evening than like anything solid colliding. Individual stars simply glide among one another, drawn by gravity into long, graceful streams and arcs, and over hundreds of millions of years, the two spirals slowly settle and blend into one. It can steady the mind to remember that this whole meeting, however grand, unfolds at a pace no living thing could ever perceive as motion. If one could somehow watch the two galaxies through a single human lifetime, they would appear perfectly, absolutely still, two great frozen pinwheels of light hanging in the dark, not moving at all. The drawing together happens across hundreds of millions of years, so that the change from one age to the next is finer than the finest thread. Only by folding together vast stretches of time, 10,000 generations at a stroke, could the motion ever be seen. So there is nothing sudden here, nothing that rushes or looms. There is only the deepest slowness, a grandeur so unhurried that within it every single moment is a moment of near-perfect stillness and calm. And there is a comforting smallness in Voyager's part in all of it, worth resting on. The craft is one object among the several hundred billion stars of its home galaxy, and those stars are themselves about to mingle with the several hundred billion of the neighbor. Set against numbers like that, the little traveler is smaller than a single grain of sand on all the shores of a world, and yet its smallness is precisely what keeps it safe. It is far too slight to be a player in the great meeting, far too tiny to be seized or swept up by forces meant for whole galaxies. Instead, it is simply carried, a mote among motes moved gently this way and that by the vast slow tides, and set down, when all the folding is done, still whole, still cold, still drifting in a new galaxy formed calmly from two. Picture it as slowly as it truly happens. Over that immense span, the familiar spiral shape of the home galaxy loosens and stretches, arms pulled out into long luminous ribbons, the two centers drifting closer through the dark, orbiting each other, easing together across ages so long that any single moment within them would look almost perfectly still. In the end, the two great spirals will have merged into a single vast gathering of stars, a new galaxy, neither exactly the old home nor its old neighbor, but something formed calmly from both. And through this entire grand and gentle reshaping of the heavens, one small cold traveler drifts along, carried within the flow, no more disturbed by the meeting of galaxies than a single grain of sand is disturbed by the slow shifting of a dune. That is perhaps the most quietly astonishing scale we have reached. 2 entire galaxies, each holding hundreds of billions of stars, come together across billions of years, and the little craft that left one small world is simply one more mote borne along in the current, neither harmed nor halted, its record still fixed to its flank, its metal still smooth and cold. The meeting of galaxies, which sounds like the grandest event imaginable, is for Voyager only more of the same patient, drifting it has always done, through a sky that has entirely rearranged itself around it. Let us slow down and truly picture the gentleness of this meeting, because everything about the word collision misleads here. When 2 galaxies come together, it is nothing like 2 objects striking. It is more like 2 vast, slow swarms of light passing through one another, over hundreds of millions of years, so gradually that within any single stretch of time the whole scene would appear frozen. The stars are so far apart, one from another, that as the 2 great pinwheels interweave, almost none of them come anywhere near a neighbor. They glide among each other like 2 flocks of birds, crossing paths in a wide evening sky. Each bird keeping its own space, the flocks blending without a single feather touching. Over the long ages, the mutual pull draws the stars into sweeping arcs and long trailing streamers of light, beautiful and unhurried. A slow choreography played out across the scale of time no living thing could ever watch to its end. And Voyager, one single mote within one of those swarms, is swept along in the great slow motion without any harm at all. It is drawn this way and that by the shifting gravity of the merging galaxies, its long orbit reshaped over the eons, carried into new arcs and new distances as the 2 star systems settle into one. But at no point is it in any danger from the meeting. For the same reason, no star strikes another. The spaces are simply too vast. It rides the tide of the merger, the way a single grain of sand rides the slow reshaping of a whole coastline, moved by forces beyond all reckoning, yet never so much as touched by them. And so the grandest event in the whole history of the local sky passes over the little traveler as gently as a change of season and leaves it drifting on, cold and smooth and whole. It is worth holding gently how ordinary this grand meeting is in the larger life of the cosmos. Galaxies drawing together and merging is not a rare or exceptional thing. It is one of the ordinary ways that galaxies grow and change across the ages, happening throughout the universe over and over, wherever 2 great gatherings of stars have drifted near enough for gravity to draw them into one. The coming together of our galaxy and its neighbor is simply our own turn at a very old and very common dance, one that countless other pairs of galaxies have already stepped through in the deep past. There is a deep solace in that, in knowing that even the merging of the whole sky is a natural and unhurried event, no more a disruption than the joining of 2 slow rivers into one broader, calmer flow. And through the long unfolding of it, the sky above any surviving world would change with a slowness beyond all watching, the neighbor galaxy swelling from a faint smudge into a broad, soft glow spread across the heavens, over so many millions of years that no single generation could ever notice the difference. There would be no moment of alarm, no night when the sky suddenly changed. Instead, there would only be the gradual, gentle brightening of the deep sky across ages, a slow and stately grandeur unfolding at a pace too vast for any eye. And within all that immensity, the little craft drifts on as it always has, one small cold traveler carried in the current of a whole galaxy folding into another, no more troubled by the merger than a single drop is troubled by the joining of two seas. Still, we are not at the end of the river. Beyond the merging of galaxies, beyond the settling of the Sunday into its small, cooling ember, the years keep climbing out of the billions and toward numbers so vast that the billions themselves begin to look small. Ahead lies the deepest and quietest country of all, a future measured in trillions of years, where the whole sky slowly changes its character, and where our small traveler drifts on as one of the last unchanging things. Let us take one more breath and drift forward into that farthest quiet. Now we come to the far country, and the numbers change their nature entirely. We have spoken of thousands of years, and of millions, and of billions, and each leap was 1,000-fold beyond the last. Now we take one more such leap into the trillions, 1,000 times beyond even the billions, and here the whole sky itself begins, ever so slowly, to change its character. For across such vast reaches of time, the great work of making new stars, which has lit the galaxies for their whole history, gradually winds down. The clouds of gas from which stars are born are used up faster than they are replenished, and one by one, across ages beyond counting, the brightest and hottest stars finish their shining and are not replaced. This darkening does not come suddenly. It softens across spans of time so long that 1 billion years is only a single step within them. The great luminous galaxies, so brilliant in the era we know, fade gradually toward a deeper and gentler glow, lit now mostly by the smallest and coolest and longest lasting stars, the faint enduring embers that shine on with the most patience of all. Those small stars can go on glowing for a length of time that dwarfs everything that has come before, so the cosmos does not fall abruptly quiet. Rather, it settles slowly, like a great room in which the bright lamps are turned down one by one over an age, leaving only the softest of night lights burning here and there across an immense and deepening calm. And through this slow and gentle darkening of everything, Voyager drifts on. Its record, we may remember, was built to endure on the order of 1 billion years, and by the trillion-year era, even that immense span has long since turned. Whether the disk is still whole, or whether the slow patience of time has at last softened its engraving, no one can say, and no one will be there to look. But the craft itself, the cold, smooth metal of it, the wide dish and the long booms, and the small, quiet cylinder that once gave it warmth, drifts on through the deepening calm, carried by the same push it was given in a single afternoon, an unthinkable time ago. It has become one of the most enduring things the young world that made it ever set adrift. Hold for a moment. What this small craft has become. It is a time capsule of a single human century, a slice of one world at one brief chapter of its long story, pressed into a golden disc and carried out beyond the reach of any change. Every voice recorded on it, every heartbeat and greeting and song belonged to 100-year window, so thin that against the trillion-year, quiet it is less than the flicker of a firefly against the whole of a long night. And that flicker, that single tiny sample of what it was once like to be alive on a blue world, circling a steady yellow star, drifts on through the vast soft darkness, kept safe by nothing more than the great emptiness that surrounds it. Here, it is worth resting on the quality of this deep future dark, because it is not the harsh emptiness one might first imagine, but something far softer. The cosmos does not go cold and black all at once, like a lamp switched off. It dims the way a long evening dims, by degrees so gradual that within any single age, the change can hardly be seen at all. The last and smallest stars, the faint patient embers, are the ones that endure the longest, and they can go on glowing for spans of time so immense that they make even the trillion-year mark seem early. So the far future is not a void. It is a vast, dim, tranquil expanse, lit here and there by the softest of enduring lights, a cosmos settling slowly into a deep and gentle rest, spacious and calm and unhurried, with the little craft drifting somewhere within it as it always has. And there is a rare and quiet dignity in what the craft has become by this farthest reach. It is one of the most enduring things its makers ever set adrift, a made object that has outlasted the very world that shaped it and the very star that warmed that world. Whatever remains of the golden record it carries, whether the fine engraving still holds or has softened at last under the slow patience of the ages, the craft itself drifts on, faithful to nothing but the physics that carries it, keeping the shape it was given in a single afternoon, so unimaginably long ago that the number itself has lost all footing. It has kept its small portrait of 100 human years, far longer than anyone who gathered that portrait could ever have dared to hope, and it keeps it still out in the soft and boundless dark. To feel the trillion-year quiet, it helps to build one last ladder of scale, because the jump is so vast that the mind needs the steps. 1,000 years is time enough for a civilization to rise and settle. Push on to 1,000,000 years, 1,000 of those, and whole species come and go. Step further still, to 1,000,000,000 years, 1,000 billions, long enough for simple life to become complex across an entire world, and 1,000,000,000,000 years is 1,000 billions, a step as far beyond 1,000,000,000 years as 1,000,000,000 years is beyond a single million. It is a span so long that the bright era of the galaxies, the whole age in which stars blaze and worlds warm and life stirs, is only the earliest and briefest chapter within it. And through all of that immensity, out past every step of the ladder, the little craft keeps drifting, patient beyond the reach of any number the mind can hold. In that farthest quiet, a gentle question settles softly over the whole journey, not as a worry, but as a wonder. What is the little craft for, out there, with no one to find it, no eye to read its record, no hand ever likely to draw it from the dark? Perhaps the answer is simply that it goes on, and that the going is enough. It was made as a reaching out, a small gesture of a young world, casting a token of itself into the deep. And that gesture does not need to be received to have been worth the making. The craft carries forward the plain fact that a world once existed that looked up and wondered, and chose to send a little of itself outward into the long dark hopefully, and without expectation. That fact drifts on, held safe in cold metal, whether or not anyone ever knows it did. There is no ending to this part of the river, no far shore where the water stops. The trillion-year quiet simply deepens, softens, and stretches onward beyond any number we could reasonably name. And the little craft drifts on within it, changeless, patient, unhurried, as it has drifted through everything that came before. It has outlasted its makers and their world, outlasted the bright noon of its own star, outlasted the very shape of the galaxy it was born in, and it goes on still. And now, having followed it all the way out to the farthest quiet, it is time for us to turn softly back and let both the traveler and ourselves come to rest. So we come back, as all long journeys do, to where we began, to the small craft alone in the cold dark. We have followed it out past the planets and across the great bubble of the Sunday, through the slow fading of its voice and into the long silence, past a faraway star in 40,000 years and around the vast slow wheel of the galaxy, through the calm evening of the Sunday and the gentle meeting of two galaxies, and on into the trillion-year quiet, where the sky itself grows soft and dim. And in the end, it is exactly what it was in the beginning, a small-made thing drifting on through the dark, carrying its quiet message, needing nothing, harming nothing, simply going on. Think back for a moment over the whole length of the river we have followed tonight, and notice how the small craft never once changed its nature. At the beginning, it was a made thing drifting through the cold, and at the end, a trillion years on, it is a made thing drifting still. Everything vast happened around it. Stars wheeled and rearranged. The Sunday grew old and settled into a small bright ember. Whole galaxies folded together into one, and the bright era of the cosmos gave way to a soft and endless dusk. And through all of it, the traveler simply held its course, unchanged, faithful to the single gentle push it was given so long ago. There is a rare kind of peace in that steadiness, the peace of a thing that has found, in the great emptiness, the one form of endurance that costs nothing and asks nothing, and can therefore go on and on. And notice, too, how the story that began in solitude ends not in loneliness, but in a kind of quiet belonging. The craft is alone. Yes, in the sense that nothing travels beside it. But it is held, all the same, cradled by the gravity of a whole galaxy, carried on the great slow current that carries everything. At home in the dark, the way a single note is at home within a long and gentle chord. It needs no companion to be safe, no witness to endure, no destination to give its drifting meaning. Its meaning is simply that it goes on, carrying its small bright record of one human century, a token of a world that once looked up at the same stars we look up at now, and chose to send a little of itself out into the deep with nothing but hope for company. There is a deep and gentle comfort in that, if we let ourselves feel it. So much of what troubles a restless mind is the sense that things must be held, watched over, kept from slipping away. And here is one small thing that needs none of that. Voyager asks nothing of us now. It does not need to be remembered to keep traveling, or watched to stay safe, or worried over to endure. Instead, it simply drifts, carried by an old kindness of physics, through a universe vast enough and empty enough to keep it whole for longer than the mind can hold. The letting go out here is not a loss. It is the very thing that lets the little traveler go on forever. So let the thought of it stay with you as the room grows soft around you. Somewhere far beyond every planet, Beyond the edge of the Sunday's own bubble, a small cold traveler is drifting through the dark, this very moment, patient and unhurried, carrying a little golden record of 100 human years out into the great quiet. And it will go on drifting long after tonight has faded into tomorrow. There is nothing you need to do about any of it. You need to be nowhere at all. Let the little craft drift and let yourself drift with it, gently downward into rest. Rest now. Let the vastness hold you as lightly as it holds that small drifting craft, and let it carry you the rest of the way down. Good night.